Today we're going to go over the difference between double action and single action. What's up, America? This is Kim with Geauga Firearms Academy. Today we're going to look at what the difference is between double and single action. Let's get started. We're going to use this revolver first because it's actually double and single action. When you're thinking about double and single action, you want to think about how many jobs the trigger has to do. So let's look at that a little slowly. So as I put pressure on the trigger face, the hammer right here is cocking, and that's its first job. And as I go back, it does its second job, which is releases the hammer. So when you have a double action, it does two jobs. It does cocking and then releasing. So in double action, the trigger starts a little bit front of center, and it has to travel all the way to the rear. So watch it as it goes all the way back there, which is the trigger travel. It's like an inch and a quarter, which is a long way. It's like a country mile in shooting. So let's look at this in single action. Now remember, this is the same exact gun. It's in the same caliber, but look at the difference. So as we cock the hammer, it is now single action, and you can see how much space is taken up, and the trigger travel has just been reduced by like 98%. Now when we press the trigger, it releases the hammer, and I barely had to do anything. This is going to aid in accuracy. Another characteristic of double action is a very heavy trigger. So when I'm putting pressure on this trigger, for example, this is 12 pounds, so you'd have to add 12 pounds of pressure for it to go off. You can see as I'm pushing it back. Now let's put the same trigger in single action. And here you can see I can just use my pinky and I barely press the trigger and it goes off. Let's talk about the skills it takes to shoot in double action. So not only do you have this trigger travel, but you also have a lot heavier trigger. So you got to keep these two sights steady while you're pressing back the trigger. You got a longer way to go and a lot more pressure to hold on to. Versus when it's in single action and you can just barely press the trigger, it goes off. A lot less travel time and a lot lighter trigger. So let's look at a pistol now. This is an SAO, a single action only. And you can tell by just looking at it, the trigger is a lot farther back. It's not front of center like you would have with a double action. So as I press the trigger, the hammer is released. So if I try to press the trigger again, you can see that nothing happens because the hammer is not going to move because this is not a double action pistol. And because as you know, double action is cocking it and then releasing it. And single action can only release the hammer. So unless this hammer is cocked, it cannot go off. The majority of pistols are single action, but there are a few exceptions. And I'm going to have Neil come in because he's a lot better at explaining all the little technical details. So let's have him come in.
There's a couple models of guns, like the SIG P250, for example. That's a pistol that is a double action only gun where it actually has a hammer, although it looks identical to the striker fired cousin, the 320, and the hammer comes back and fires. Not a very successful gun for them. Now, you're also going to find true single action striker fired guns. They're going to be classified as DAOs, as double action only. And this comes up a lot in class, and I'm really only doing this for the keyboard warriors. Really, this is really stupid. But there's going to be guns out there that are going to act completely as single action only guns, and they're striker fired guns. And so the reason that they call them double action only is because technically, mechanically, inside the gun, when you press the trigger, it partially cocks the striker. The slide fully cocks the striker, the other portion of it, and so they classify it technically as a double action only. But at the end of the day, that is nonsense. That is just maybe a requirement by the manufacturer or certain guidelines through competition. But at the end of the day, that is a single action gun only. Because when that striker falls, if it had a soft primer strike, for example, you can press the trigger all day long. And I don't care that it says DAO or not. It will never recock itself and release again.
So just to wrap it up, the easy way to remember double and single action is how many jobs the trigger has to do. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I always appreciate that. Leave me a comment. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and also press the little bell next to it so that every time I put a video out, you get a notification. You can find us, of course, here on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and we put all of our premium content on Patreon. Until next time, remember, it's always better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So you have to travel, it has to travel.
You can't put it in front of your face.
Nice. can see the hammer begins to, I